Well, good morning or afternoon or whenever they're playing this recording. At the time you're watching this, I will, if all goes according to plan, I'll be in Nepal. So I would appreciate prayer that that trip is going well. Going with Tim Keep to do some pastoral training in Nepal. So excited about that. That's why I'm with you in via video rather than in real life. I should also mention that I've had a cold this week, so I probably sound a little funny. Might want to stay back from the projector or screen or whatever so you don't catch anything. I have my tea with honey, which is a very poor substitute for good coffee, but that's what I'm doing right now. So we'll do this, and if you can endure my occasional throat clearing or odd sounding voice, we'll do something here. So Brother Sam's asked me to talk about effective Sunday school, and I'm happy to do that. I will note, I don't know if this is what he wanted or not, so this may be a surprise for everybody. To be effective, you can't know if something's effective until you know what you're trying to accomplish. So to have an effective Sunday school, you have to know what you're trying to accomplish with Sunday school before you can figure out whether you're accomplishing it or not. So I want to back off a little bit and just talk about the purpose of church. A man, I believe by the name of Simon Sinek, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, did a famous TED talk on start with why. And of course, he was talking about business, but it applies to the church, that everything we do should start with the question of why are we doing it? What are we trying to accomplish with it? What's the purpose we're doing things for? So let's start there. I'll say this morning because I don't know when you're playing this. So if it's not morning, just read in afternoon or whatever. But I'll say morning. So we're going to talk about this morning. What's the purpose of church? Well, big picture, I think there are 5 purposes for church, all found in Scripture, all actually found in Acts chapter 2. You may break them down slightly differently than I do. It's okay, but for the sake of this session, we're going to talk about 5 purposes for church. Number 1, it's found, 4 of them are found in Acts 2:42, which says, and the early disciples devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. So we have, number 1, we have learning, the apostles' teaching. They're learning the doctrine, they're learning what's going on. In today's situation, we call that biblical learning, biblical education, learning the doctrine. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, that's learning, and fellowship, that's fellowship, that's sharing life, that's doing things together, but not just doing things together. Drinking coffee, eating donuts, playing disc golf, whatever. That's part of fellowship, but real fellowship's deeper than that. It's sharing burdens. It's praying for one another. It's really genuinely sharing life. That's what fellowship is. And then to the breaking of bread, that is a reference to communion, actually. Apparently, very early here, they weren't doing communion once or twice a year, or 4 times a year. It was every time they got together. They'd give thanks for their food. They would basically have communion with the food they have in front of them as a commemoration of Christ every meal. So the breaking of bread is a reference to a type of daily worship. And so they devoted themselves to the breaking of bread is the idea of worship. The church worships. And then prayer, of course, is prayer. So there we find the early church devoting themselves to 4 things: learning the doctrine, fellowshipping with one another, worshiping consistently, and praying together. And then we come down to verse 47. It says, the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. So there we have the idea of outreach, of reaching the lost. So you should have a paper in front of you and has those 5 things listed. Those are the purposes of the church: learning, fellowship, worship, prayer, and outreach. That's big picture. Now, let's for the moment set aside Sunday school. Don't worry about Sunday school right now. But what I want you to do for the next 2 minutes is, on your paper, in the blanks there beside each one of those words, Write down how your church is fulfilling that aspect of church. So it's going to look different for each person. Each church is going to be a little different, but probably not enormously different. We would probably have learning being morning sermon, Sunday evening Bible study, and then we have a youth Bible study on Wednesday night. Those are our 3 learning times for the church. Fellowship, again, for us, before church and after church, that's part of what happens at church. Not to go on a rabbit trail here, and I know there's a variety of views on this, but that's one reason some churches have a coffee bar in the foyer, is as a time to sit and fellowship. They're trying to work in fellowship, which is what church should be doing. I'm not suggesting that we should all add a coffee bar to our foyer. I'm just pointing out that fellowship is an important part of who we are as a church. When does fellowship happen at your church? Worship, of course, would be Sunday morning worship service, Sunday evening if you're singing. So when does work, and if there's other times, when does worship happen at your church? Uh, Prayer. Do you have a prayer meeting? And not just what we call a prayer meeting, you get together and sing a song and have a sermon. Genuinely times of prayer. Should be happening during services, but there should be times your church is getting together just for prayer as well. For us, Tuesday night, we get together just to share requests and pray. Then outreach. How is your church doing outreach? What is it in your church that is outreach oriented? So those 5 elements of church. So we're gonna have 2 minutes. I'll have a timer and give you 2 minutes to just think it through. Don't overthink it, but just list how your church in each of these 5 areas is fulfilling the need, so we're going to give you 2 minutes and just think through for your church, how are you fulfilling each of these 5 areas, not including Sunday school. Leave that out of the question for the moment. How are you fulfilling these 5 issues in your church? Try it one more time. So, oh, good grief. So for your church, look over these 5. So we're going to take 2 minutes. I'll put a timer on the screen, and just don't overthink it, but just list how your church is fulfilling each of these 5 areas, and don't put Sunday school there anywhere yet. Okay. Okay, now that you have these 5 areas kind of mapped out, this is how my church is fulfilling each of these 5 areas. Look it over and see if there's a gap there somewhere. And if there's something, when you think it through, you say, you know what, we're not fellowshipping quite as strongly. That's not as big a piece as it should be. Or, you know what, prayer is kind of getting a little bit of a short stick here. Then the question becomes, how can Sunday school fill that gap? So what I'm challenging you to think of Sunday school not just as we have to get together, sit down together, and go through a lesson, but Sunday school is a tool to help fill the gaps of what church needs to be doing. So for example, and you're going to have to think outside the standard approach to Sunday school sometimes for this. The usual niche, the usual purpose of Sunday school is learning and outreach. Usually, for many churches, you're running a bus. You have unchurched kids coming in for Sunday school, so you have outreach going on there. Maybe you have teens coming in, outreach going on there, and learning. You're learning primarily in Sunday school, and that's fine. If that's the niche that Sunday school needs to fill in your church, that's great. Go for it. But it doesn't have to only be that. What gap is there? For example, if the gap in your church is in the area of fellowship and prayer, for example, then maybe take your Sunday school time and make it a weekly prayer breakfast. If you have a fellowship hall or someplace where you and your congregation is comfortable having coffee and danishes or donuts or whatever, do that. Get together Sunday school time, have coffee, have some kind of muffins or something, for 30 minutes of just talking, just sharing. And then the last 15 minutes, that's all put away, and you have focused prayer together for one another during that time. So that'd be one way of taking that Sunday school slot and using that to fill a gap that may not be the standard Sunday school approach, but it may be exactly what your church needs. If outreach is the weakness for your church, then if you're wanting to actually do Sunday school as an outreach and have unchurched people come into Sunday school, you might even consider changing the time. I know that for most of us, 9:30 or 10 or whatever time we have Sunday school is not early, but for unchurched people, Saturday and Sunday is their sleep-in day. That's their morning to relax and do nothing in many cases. And so to say, hey, come to church 9:30 Sunday morning is really interrupting their schedule because they're used to waking up and having coffee and just relaxing Sunday morning. So some churches have very successfully shifted Sunday school to Sunday evening and done outreach then, and it seems to work much better for them. Again, there's no one solid exact answer for everybody, but if you want to do outreach during these times, you might think about timing it in the afternoon or evening, when outreach can be effective. Or another option for outreach is use the time for an outreach-oriented activity. You can get lists of new movers. New movers evangelism is one site that you can get by mailing lists of people who've just moved to your area. Or if you just search new mover lists for churches, there are some pretty good deals. Some are not bad. Price-wise, you get all the people moving in, and you can prepare mailers and send mass mailings to people just moving to the area that'll be looking for churches. And so that could be a time, if you're wanting outreach that way, you can take that Sunday school time and use that to have one of your older class or your teens hand address envelopes and stamp, well, not envelopes, usually postcards or something, to send that way. It's a time to, if you need to fellowship and pull in people who can't come to church, shut-ins or visitors. It could be a time of putting gift baskets together, making some little goodies to hand out to shut-ins and so on. Partnering with another local ministry. If there's, here in Troy, we have a number of ministries, a women's shelter. We actually work with the drug court, the treatment court, and prepare baskets. So any young lady who's going through treatment court, who is expecting or has just had a baby, we have a baby basket we give to her. And every now and then the teens will just take their class time and be sure we have those baskets prepped in time for that. So you can use Sunday school slot as a time to work on outreach directly or indirectly. So the first step of an effective Sunday school is to figure out, what are you trying to accomplish with Sunday school? What's the niche? What's the gap that Sunday school needs to fill in church? Now, it may be learning. Learning is the standard response, and that may well be where it needs to be, to have a more focused, directed, topical, or systematic approach to learning. And if that's the case, then that comes the next question. Learning what? It's easy to take the quarterly and go through it, but sometimes that's a great approach. Sometimes it's not the best approach. Effective ministry, including Sunday school, is found where need, desire, and resources overlap. So you may have a need of something and no one feels the need. No one recognizes the need. If your church is prayerless, you have a need of prayer, but no one has any real urge to pray. That's a problem, number one. um, but then if that's the case, you start a prayer group, a prayer time, it's not going to be real effective because nobody's going to be tied into it. But when there's need, when there's a desire, and when there's resources for something, that's when ministry gets really effective. So let's first talk about the need. What does your church need? Learning may be exactly where Sunday school needs to fit in your church. If that's the case, that opens up the second question, which is simply this: learning what? Which brings in the second element of effective ministry, desire. What do people want to learn about? What would they be interested in learning about? Would they like to take a book, a devotional book, and just go through a devotional book? Or a theological book of some sort. C.S. Lewis has some great stuff to go through. Are they interested in Bible education, more the classic Sunday school approach, where we're going through lessons on a certain book or on a certain topic? Practical Christian training. The Bible deals with so many practical things: how to handle money, how to raise children, life skills, that in my mind, all of them are perfectly appropriate for Sunday school. Anything that makes you a better Christian, a more effective Christian, is fair game for Sunday school. It could be online, learning online stuff, how to behave and not behave on social media, how to be safe online, any number of things. Whatever is going to help you or your people become a more effective Christian should be absolutely appropriate for Sunday school. It doesn't have to be the traditional understanding of we have to study through a book of the Bible or a certain approach to something theological. It can be very practical. If people in your church want to learn about money, Ramsey has his course on money, Financial Peace University, that could be done as a Sunday school. You had to tweak a little bit to do it, but it could be done. So again, when you're learning something, you want to use Sunday school for learning. It doesn't have to be the traditional teaching about the Bible directly. It needs to be biblically based, but it can certainly be practical, any number of things. Of course, the question of desire doesn't just relate to learning. What need are your people sensing? Are there people in your church, or maybe you as leader of your church, are just sensing the need? We should focus on outreach, or we should, there's a ministry in town. I'm really having a heart right now for the homeless, and there's a homeless ministry or a homeless shelter that we could really help, or something. Find where that desire is, where the Spirit's already kind of leading that way, and then see how Sunday school can move that direction. Whatever you're trying to accomplish with Sunday school, whether it's learning, fellowship, worship, prayer, outreach, whatever it is, it's only going to be a success if the people see value in what you're doing. Now, sometimes as a leader, you have to make the case. You have to nurture the desire. But it's a whole lot easier, and I'd argue more effective, more consistent with how the Spirit works, that the Spirit will be kind of pushing a direction already. And instead of inventing something, just no one cares anything about homeless people right now, so let's start something for homeless people. The Spirit is probably going to be already moving some hearts a direction. And if they're starting to move people in the direction of helping the homeless, that may be great. If not, find where the Spirit's already leading, already kind of pushing people's minds and hearts, and move that direction. And then Sunday school becomes a tool to move forward in step with the Spirit. As a leader, sometimes you have to make that case. You have to nurture that desire. But find the desire that the Spirit's already pushing in your heart or in the hearts of your people. And then that's where to bring Sunday school into the picture and move it forward. Again, back to the question then of how do we do that? Do we take a time of fellowship? Do we use this time to prepare things for outreach? However that looks would look really different church to church. So you find the need in your church. You find the desire, the desire the Spirit's already creating in your heart or in the hearts of your people. And the third element then is resources. For effective ministry, you have to have resources. That doesn't just need money. Money probably will be involved, but that's the last picture. That's the last piece. Let's talk about other things first. Personnel. What skill, what talent, what ability is available in your church? One of the big problems we're into with Sunday school is that people who are available to teach don't feel they have the ability to teach in many cases. Sometimes it's a matter of, okay, it's okay to step outside your comfort zone and go ahead and jump in and do it. And sometimes it's maybe a better choice to say, okay, if you don't feel able to teach about the book of Hebrews, could you take a few weeks and teach us something you do know? Something that God has taught you, or some practical skill you have that someone else may not. Yeah, again, if you have maybe some young couples or young mothers in your church who would love to learn how to bake, why not let some of the older ladies in the church take the time? If you have a fellowship hall for it with kitchen, take the time to learn baking. It's part of, being hospitable, and to me would be a perfectly appropriate use of Sunday school time to learn something practical like that. Who you have, look over who's available and what skills, what talents, what abilities they have that may not always fit the traditional Sunday school format. If you do want to learn something and don't have someone that really feels qualified to do it, there are many video curriculums out there. Some are expensive, some are not, but you can almost always find some sort of video book, either book or video curriculum that you could use as a basis. So it doesn't have to be all raw material, start from scratch. And of course, there's always the quarterly, the traditional approach, which is fine as well. But don't overlook the skills, the talents that are there in your congregation, even if it's not the traditional Bible teaching approach. What materials do you have? Do you have something for visuals, projector, screen? Do you have tables? If you're going to put together gift baskets, you should have some sort of place you can spread out and work with, with more room. Do you have a place you can go just relax and talk and fellowship and share in small group, sort of a small group informal fellowship type setting? Which brings up the facilities. Do you have a fellowship hall and a kitchen facilities that you're comfortable using? Mentioned baking as a possibility. Obviously, you need facilities for that. What are the facilities available to you? If the only place you can go is a sanctuary, you're going to be more limited. You should still get creative and work it out and do things. But you'd be more limited if you only have a sanctuary versus if you have a separate building or a place in the church to do other things. You got to be sensitive, obviously. Some people feel very strongly what can be done in the church building, an attached room or a basement versus a separate building. Each church can be different on that. Be sensitive to where your people feel, how your people feel, and what they're okay with. But look at your facilities. What do you have to work with? Your materials, your personnel. If you just start there as, okay, we have the room and the people, now what do we do? You're lost. If you start with, what am I trying to accomplish? Okay, now I have my goal in mind. How do I get there using what I have? That's where you're a lot more focused. You're not just out there going, well, I don't know. We have people who can fix cars and bake cakes. I don't know what to do. Start with why. Start with what you're trying to accomplish. Then build from there to who you have, facilities, the materials, and then finances. What's the budget? Can you afford a video curriculum? Maybe even could, and this is a crazy thought I'll offer to the conference. What about partnering together and creating a conference video or media library? So small churches that want to teach on child raising and don't have someone that feels qualified and can't afford a good video curriculum could borrow that curriculum from the conference. Um, Bus and Convention Outreach. Bus and Outreach Convention, there we go, has lots of material. It's audio, but could be a great option to get some of that material and use that in a Sunday school format. Um, the finances can't drive the ministry. You don't start with saying, well, we have a room and we have $500. What can we do? It's, okay, here's what we want to accomplish. We want to help people learn how to handle money. We have a budget of $200 to do that. So how do we make it work? You start with why. You start with what you're trying to accomplish. You look at what people are wanting. Where's the Spirit already kind of nudging and leading people? And then how can you use Sunday school to step in and further what you're already trying to accomplish?